much appreciate it. Well, one Californian trying to untangle the political ties between the SEIU and the Obama administration is Republican Congressman Darrell, who joins us now from Washington. Congressman Issa, good to see you. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, David.
So this looks like a classic instance of conflict of interest to me. You have a union, a very powerful union that's contributed $30 million to the Obama administration, a union that had as one of its chief officers a guy who was the White House political director. David Axelrod was involved with the union, other people, and now they are getting a seat at the table, essentially directing federal monies toward California. Am I wrong?
Well, not only are they withholding these monies, but they had a seat at both tables because, you know, California is the one place in which the plaintiff trial lawyers say that they don't have control, the unions do. The unions were the ones that insisted on this budget increase in California that caused a large tax increase and made only very minor cuts. These cuts, these very minor, $74 million into a $150 billion budget, that's all that's virtually being cut. They cut it knowing that they had written the legislation here in Washington to create a situation in which they could then complain about it and get the President of the United States to personally engage in withholding billions of dollars over $74 million in, quote, cuts.
Well, and as everybody knows, California has to make some serious cuts. I think California has a budget deficit over $40 billion, so you got to make the cuts. Finally, the Republicans and Democrats got together for one of these cuts that did not please this workers' union, the SEIU, and they put pressure on their buddies in the Obama administration. Again, it's conflict of interest. I guess even some of the Democrats in California are upset about this, no?
Well, the Democrats had voted for an overall increase in spending with a huge tax increase, couldn't do everything for everyone. So, yes, they're upset now that they probably cannot put back together the consortium of all the Democrats plus 3 Republicans and the governor leaning heavily on these retiring members to get this budget with its large tax increase passed. And they already have an additional tax increase being voted on, hopefully voted down by the people of California to make the whole deal work. California is one of the places in which when you find a cut, you should frame it because real cuts in California don't usually exist.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole issue of federalism here, Congressman, I don't want to get too caught in the weeds, but the fact that you know, states are supposed to be able to do what they think needs to be done with their own budget, to have that dictated in a sort of extortionist way by the White House saying if you don't give our friends, this particular union, what they want, we're going to withhold $7 billion from you. I mean, that's not the way the founders set up our country.
Well, David, you're absolutely right. And additionally, California is a donor state, so the $7 billion we're getting, we're going to pay for many times over. But it just goes to show you just how deep the roots are in the Democratic Party of the union movement, that they're able to make these demands with a straight face, flies in the face of all of our history of the state. It even flies in the face of proportion. We're talking about we're getting the $7 billion. That's just a small share of the stimulus that's being sent to the state directly. Well, in fact, it's going to create more union jobs in California if they deliver it than if they withhold it. But it's clear this union got to the president owes him, and the president's paying off on his debt.
By the way, it may be water past the bridge here, but the fact is that in April 15th, there was this conference call between state officials and federal officials on this issue about these cuts that the California government had organized. And it seemed like at the end of that conversation that the feds and the states agreed with each other. But then 15 days later came this letter from the White House saying, you got to do what the union wants. What happened in those 15 days? Do you know?
Well, I think what happened in 15 days is the union said, we don't care about what is fair overall. We want what we want, which is $2 more for these unskilled workers to go to people's homes in a program that's ballooning in cost. Very clearly, even some Democrats in California think that there had to be some cost controls put on this program. At this point, my assumption is that Governor Schwarzenegger is looking for a way, without going back to the legislature or going to the voters, to solve this, and he doesn't really have one right now.
Now, let's just be clear. What the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, wants is an expansion of membership because they get billions of dollars from their members. So this is an attempt by that union to expand its membership, right?
Absolutely, and actually it's sort of interesting because when you look at the 7.5% of America that's unionized, more and more and more, it's almost all in government or working for government, and as a result, influencing government. And this is just another example where this kind of a cut in this time when 11% of California is laid off, this kind of a cut wouldn't even be objected to if it wasn't a government entity trying to have a little austerity, very little, but a little austerity. And that's our problem, is the union movement in America today is it's a federal, state, and local worker and their contractor movement. It's no longer a private sector movement at all.
Well, it is. There is a private sector movement, but clearly the biggest growth is coming from the public sector unions. But what do you do now, Congressman? What does the state of California do now, knowing that there are these kind of extortionist tactics coming out of Washington?
Well, I certainly think in the special election on Tuesday, next Tuesday, there's going to be a resounding no on extending the tax increases, and perhaps giving some thought to an initiative that then would reduce our taxes. The people are very close to another Prop 13, limiting how much money the government extorts, even through their direct votes, because California has shown that the legislature will increase taxes in bad times and increase spending in good times, and as a result, our taxes go up unless we say no. And I think we're very close to that in California. I would very much predict that what you saw in Prop 13 in the 70s is about to occur on the overall taxation and spending in California, because we're at 11.3% income tax. We're the highest tax state in the union, and there's no end in sight because we can't even live within that high tax.
By the way, Proposition 13 was headlined by a guy named Howard Jarvis, the late Howard Jarvis. He was a wonderful, feisty guy. Is there a leader in California, someone like Howard Jarvis, to push something like Proposition 13?
I think there will be. I think that this 1A through F that's on the ballot next Tuesday, after it's opposed by the voters in huge numbers, I believe what's going to happen is that's going to set the marker, if you will, for it's time to take control of our legislature and let them spend the money, yes, but let them spend only what we've agreed to be taxed. That's not the case in California today. Final
question, Congressman. These people that were associated with the SEIU that are now working for the White House, Patrick Gaspar, David Axelrod, David Plouffe, who's Obama's campaign manager. He's now a senior advisor to a group that works with the union. You're in Washington. Have you talked to these people and said, this is a clear conflict of interest, you shouldn't be doing it?
Well, we're sort of in a letter-writing campaign. Our direct phone calls are seldom answered, and when we're invited to the White House, it's generally so we can hear the president tell us how America was bad for the last 8 years, but things are different now. And I'm going to agree part way. There were some problems in the previous 8 years, but it's very clear we're headed in the wrong direction. And this and the Chrysler fiasco show that the unions are taking control of decision-making, and that's worse in many ways than anyone else you could put in charge of America's economic future.
Well, I would say it's not only the union, it's people who have influence, people who are tied in with the political culture of Washington. They're not all unions. Some of them are rich bankers. Whoever it is, it's that conflict of interest that should not exist, but does right now in spades. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And watch the AIG hearings tomorrow when we look at 3 trustees who we think are misguided in what their rules are relative to the American people in the AIG bailout.
AIG, just another example of what we're talking about. Congressman Issa, good to see you.